New York City was alive with the pulse of possibility on that blustery November afternoon. The streets, slick with the recent rain, shimmered under the glow of neon lights and the steady hum of honking taxis. Amid this urban symphony, fate began to weave a story of unexpected twists, a tale of a misdelivered package, a desperate plea from a broken heart, and a contract that would change two lives forever. Dylan Parker's shift had barely begun when his delivery route took an unforeseen turn. As he navigated his battered delivery van through the labyrinthine side streets of Manhattan's Lower East Side, he glanced at the address on the crumpled shipping label, 27 Lexington Avenue, Apartment 7B. His routine was clear, his mind preoccupied with the thought of making good time before his break. Yet, as he pulled up in front of a stately brownstone, a building that exuded old-world charm and a hint of faded grandeur, Dylan's heart skipped a beat. This wasn't the usual address for charitable donations. It was an elegant structure that spoke of wealth and tradition. Without a second thought, he hefted a bulky, well-packaged box from his van and strode into the building's lobby. The marble floors gleamed under the soft lighting, and a hushed silence imbued the air with a sense of exclusivity. Dylan's presence was a stark contrast to the refined decor. Dressed in a faded uniform with scuffed sneakers and a cap that had seen better days, he was an unintentional outsider in this world of privilege. At the reception desk, an elegant clerk with perfectly coiffed hair looked up. "Good afternoon. Can I help you?" she asked, her voice smooth and measured. "I've got a delivery for 7B, Dylan replied, his tone friendly but tinged with uncertainty as he offered the address. The clerk frowned slightly as she consulted her list. "That address is for the Monroe residence," she said slowly, "but Miss Victoria Monroe isn't expecting any deliveries today." Her eyes narrowed ever so slightly, as if questioning the validity of his presence. Before Dylan could protest or explain, a flurry of activity erupted in the lobby. The door swung open abruptly, and a woman whose presence commanded immediate attention entered. Victoria Monroe, the former beauty queen whose captivating smile had once graced magazine covers, appeared like a vision in an opulent emerald gown that clung to her statuesque figure. Her eyes, usually so composed and proud, now held a spark of both distress and determination. "Who is this?" Victoria demanded, her voice low and controlled yet edged with urgency. She moved toward the reception desk, her heels clicking on the polished floor as if keeping time with her racing heart. The clerk hesitated before replying. "Ms. Monroe, this gentleman claims to have a delivery for your apartment." She motioned toward Dylan, who stood awkwardly to the side, clutching the box like a lifeline. Victoria's eyes swept over him, a man who looked every bit the part of a humble delivery driver, with a warm smile and earnest eyes that betrayed his nervousness. The contrast was striking. Here was a woman burdened by the weight of expectation and tradition, and here was a man whose simplicity radiated sincerity. The moment crackled with an unspoken intensity, as if the universe had conspired to bring these two disparate lives together. "I don't recall ordering anything," Victoria said, her gaze flickering from the box to Dylan. "But if you must deliver it, please do." Yet the way her voice trembled suggested that her words concealed deeper meaning. Dylan offered a tentative smile. "I'm sorry if there's been any mistake. I just follow the instructions on the package." He extended the box toward her, the plastic wrapping rustling softly. At that moment, an elegant woman with a knowing smile stepped forward from a nearby group. Charlotte, one of Victoria's closest friends and a former beauty queen herself. "Oh, Victoria," she said, her tone both teasing and sympathetic, "you must be under a lot of pressure these days." Charlotte's eyes danced with mischief as she exchanged a glance with another friend, hinting at secrets and inside jokes known only to their inner circle. Victoria sighed and brushed a stray lock of hair behind her ear. "You have no idea, Charlotte," she murmured, her voice barely audible. "My mother, she is gravely ill. And now, as if the universe is conspiring against me, my family is breathing down my neck about finding a husband. They insist that a proper marriage is the only way to restore our honor and keep our reputation intact." Charlotte's eyes widened with concern. "Oh, Victoria, that is terrible. And here you are, drowning in family expectations while trying to keep everything together." Her voice softened with genuine care. Dylan, who had been listening quietly, felt his heart ache for the woman before him. Although he had no idea of her inner torment, her words resonated deeply with him. He had always believed that the trappings of wealth were hollow compared to the richness of genuine human connection. Later that evening, the grand lobby of the Monroe residence had transformed into a temporary haven for a select group of family members and close friends. In the midst of the hushed conversations and clinking champagne glasses, Victoria retreated to a quieter corner, a private sitting room adorned with dark wood paneling and soft, ambient lighting. Her mind was swirling with conflicting emotions: the pressure to secure a proper match, the need to shield her ailing mother from scandal, and the overwhelming desire to break free from the suffocating expectations that had defined her existence for so long. Dylan, too, found himself lingering near the doorway, his presence now less of an intrusion and more of a quiet curiosity. It was as if fate had drawn him into a sphere where he was not merely a delivery man, but a potential catalyst for change. Unable to resist the pull of that magnetic energy, Victoria beckoned him over with a subtle tilt of her head. "Dylan, could you join me for a moment?" she asked softly, her voice laced with a mixture of urgency and vulnerability. Dylan approached, his eyes meeting hers with a respectful sincerity. "Of course, Ms. Monroe," he replied, though a part of him already sensed that the formalities were about to give way to something more profound. Victoria took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I need to discuss something unusual with you," she began, her tone hesitant yet determined. "Something that might seem unthinkable, even absurd, to an outsider." Dylan inclined his head slightly, urging her to continue. "You see," Victoria said, her voice dropping to a near whisper, as if the weight of her secret demanded utmost discretion, "my family is pressuring me to secure a marriage, a real, traditional union that will keep up appearances and, more importantly, protect my mother's fragile reputation. My mother, she is nearing the end of her life, and I cannot bear the thought of her suffering the humiliation of scandal." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, and for a long moment, silence hung heavy between them. Finally, she pressed on. "So here's what I'm proposing. I want to enter into a fake marriage contract, a sham union, if you will. It will be strictly for appearances, to satisfy my family's demands, and to shield my mother from the pain of public disgrace. In exchange for your participation, I will provide you with a substantial sum, $500,000, for 6 months as compensation. It's an arrangement that would allow you to prove your worth beyond your current circumstances." Dylan's brow furrowed as he absorbed her words. "A fake marriage and $500,000 for 6 months?" he repeated slowly, his voice tinged with disbelief. "Ms. Monroe, I'm just a delivery man. I never imagined. Why me?" Victoria's eyes softened, and she reached out, placing a gentle hand on his arm. "Because, Dylan, I have seen something in you that others overlook. You possess a sincerity, a humility, and a strength that the world rarely values. You come from a background that is often dismissed by people like me. And I believe that beneath the surface of your everyday life lies a potential that, if given a chance, could change everything." The gravity of her proposition settled over them like a thick fog. Around the room, muffled conversations and clinks of glasses continued, oblivious to the private drama unfolding in that secluded space. Dylan's eyes searched hers, seeking reassurance in the vulnerability that she so candidly displayed. "Victoria, it's a lot to take in. I'm honored, truly, but I need to understand the terms clearly. This contract you're asking me to be your husband in name only, for 6 months, in exchange for $500,000? Victoria nodded, her expression resolute. "Yes. The agreement is straightforward. We'll act as husband and wife in public, attend social events together, and maintain the facade required by my family and the public. In private, however, you are free to live your life as you see fit. No emotional strings, no cohabitation obligations beyond what is necessary for appearances. It's a business arrangement, and I assure you, everything will be laid out in legal terms." Dylan's mind raced as he considered the implications. The offer was extravagant, even absurd in its generosity, and yet there was an undeniable allure to the challenge. "And you believe that this arrangement, this fake marriage, will satisfy your family? That it will keep your mother's honor intact?" Victoria's voice wavered slightly. "I have no other choice. My family's expectations are suffocating, and my mother's condition leaves me with little time. I must do everything in my power to protect her from scandal and preserve our reputation. If this contract can achieve that, then I'm willing to risk everything, even my heart, on it." A heavy silence enveloped them as Dylan weighed her words. Finally he spoke, his voice steady with quiet conviction. "Victoria, I never imagined I'd be asked to do something like this. But I believe in the idea that there is more to a person than what meets the eye. If you truly think I'm the man to help you navigate this difficult path, then I'll accept your proposal." A subtle smile played at the corners of Victoria's lips, a mixture of relief and hope. "Thank you, Dylan. I promise you, this isn't about exploitation or deceit. It's about survival, about protecting what truly matters, and perhaps, in the process, discovering a part of ourselves we never knew existed." Over the next hour, the two of them sat together in that dimly lit sitting room, drafting the preliminary terms of their fake marriage contract. Victoria retrieved a pristine notebook and a fountain pen from an ornate desk drawer, and together they scribbled down the details: the 6-month term, the financial compensation of $500,000, the public obligations they were required to fulfill, and the clear boundaries that would preserve their individual lives outside the facade. Their conversation was punctuated by thoughtful pauses and occasional bursts of laughter as they navigated the absurdity and gravity of their arrangement. At one point, Victoria leaned back in her chair and looked directly at Dylan. "I must confess, this isn't just a business transaction for me," she said softly. "It's a desperate bid to reclaim my life from the relentless expectations of my family. I'm tired of pretending, tired of being forced into a role that isn't truly mine. And I'm scared, Dylan. I'm scared of what my family will say, of what the world will think. But most of all, I'm scared for my mother. I can't bear the thought of her suffering any longer." Dylan's eyes glistened with empathy as he reached out to squeeze her hand gently. "Victoria, I can't imagine the pain you're going through. I've seen the way people judge based on appearances, and I've always believed that true worth comes from within. I'm here to help you whatever it takes. And if this contract can be the bridge that gets you the time and space you need, then I'm honored to be part of it." Their dialogue wove a tapestry of raw emotion and unspoken understanding of promise that transcended the mere exchange of money and legal documents. It was a pact forged in the crucible of desperation, yet imbued with the potential for transformation. As the formalities of their contract took shape on the page, a sense of anticipation filled the room. Outside, the night deepened, and the sounds of New York City, its car horns, murmured conversations, and distant sirens seeped through the thick walls of the old building. Inside, Victoria and Dylan had, in that fleeting moment, established an alliance that defied societal norms and expectations. It was a union built not on romance, but on mutual necessity and a shared belief that authenticity was worth more than any facade. When at last they finished writing, Victoria carefully read back the terms. This contract states that for the next 6 months, we will present ourselves as husband and wife in public. I will pay you $500,000 as compensation for your time and cooperation. We will attend all the necessary events together, maintain the appearance of a genuine marriage, but beyond that, we are free to lead separate lives. Is that correct? Dylan nodded, his gaze unwavering. Yes, that is correct. And I understand that this is solely for appearances to protect your family's honor, and to give you the space to care for your mother without the burden of scandal. Victoria's eyes softened as she extended her hand once more, sealing the agreement with a final handshake that felt more like a solemn vow. Then let it be so, she murmured. Our fates are now intertwined, not by love, at least not yet, but by necessity. And perhaps, as we navigate these 6 months, we might discover something far more genuine than either of us could have ever anticipated. Dylan managed a small smile. I look forward to finding out, Victoria. Let us face this challenge together. With the contract signed and the weight of their decision hanging in the air, the two of them stepped out of the quiet sitting room and rejoined the festivities. As they moved through the grand hall, their eyes met those of onlookers who had heard whispers of their unusual arrangement. Some faces betrayed curiosity, others skepticism, but none could deny the palpable energy between the two unlikely partners. Over the course of that evening, as the charity gala unfolded in a series of elaborate speeches, sumptuous dinners, and unexpected performances, Victoria and Dylan began to play their roles with a surprising grace. They shared whispered jokes during dinner, exchanged knowing glances at the orchestrated photo sessions, and even engaged in impromptu dialogues that bridged the gap between two worlds so different yet inexplicably connected. At one point during a break in the festivities, while standing on a balcony that overlooked the city's shimmering skyline, Victoria confided in Dylan once more. Do you ever wonder, she asked softly, if our lives could have turned out differently? That perhaps we could have met under other circumstances, without the weight of obligation or the pressure of family expectations? Dylan considered her question thoughtfully, his eyes fixed on the sprawling urban landscape below. I do, he admitted. I often dream about a world where people are valued for who they are, not for what they represent on a glossy magazine cover or a bank statement. I came from a place of privilege, but I chose a simpler path because I wanted to know what life really means. And tonight, seeing you, I can't help but feel that there is more to your story than what everyone sees. Her gaze softened, and for a brief moment, the contract and the obligations that bound them seemed to fade into the background. Perhaps, Victoria whispered, this arrangement will teach us both what it means to be truly free, if only for a little while. As the night wore on, their conversations grew deeper, the playful banter evolving into earnest reflections on life, love, and the courage to defy convention. The fake marriage contract, initially conceived as a desperate measure to shield a family from scandal, began to take on a life of its own, a symbol of the possibility that even the most unlikely unions might spark genuine transformation. By the time the gala drew to a close, New York City had settled into a quiet, contemplative calm. Victoria and Dylan, now bound together by an unorthodox pact, stood side by side as the crowds dispersed into the cool night. Their future was uncertain, the terms of their agreement both a burden and a promise. But as they stepped out into the darkened street, the city lights reflecting in their eyes, both felt a stirring of hope, a hope that in the coming months, amidst the challenges and the unexpected joys, they might discover that even a contract born of necessity could blossom into something extraordinary. And so, under the watchful gaze of a city that never sleeps, their journey began, a journey of 6 months that would test their limits, reveal hidden truths, and ultimately challenge everything. The gala's sumptuous ambience, once a stage for refined elegance and measured conversation, had suddenly turned into a battleground for condescension and disdain. In a lavish corner of the Grand Astor Hotel's ballroom, beneath the glitter of crystal chandeliers and the soft strains of a live quartet, the true nature of high society was on full display, a display of subtle cruelty masked by polished smiles and genteel laughter. Victoria Monroe, resplendent in her midnight blue gown and the epitome of refined grace, had long since earned her title as a former beauty queen and successful businesswoman. Yet tonight, her polished facade was compromised by the undercurrents of family expectations and the venomous mockery of those who considered themselves her social equals. Among them was E.B.F., a razor-tongued friend whose laughter was as sharp as it was condescending, and the rest of the Monroe family, whose eyes never missed an opportunity to belittle anyone who didn't fit their image. At the center of this maelstrom of scorn was Dylan Parker, the unassuming delivery man whose very presence seemed to defy the rigid boundaries of their glittering world. He stood awkwardly at the reception desk, having just completed an errand that had inadvertently upended the evening's polished routine. Clad in a faded uniform and wearing a cap that appeared to have weathered many New York winters, Dylan's every feature, his round face, his sincere smile spoke of honest, unpretentious labor. Yet to the Monroes and their circle, he was nothing more than an amusing aberration. "Really, Victoria," drawled Evelyn B. Franklin, known simply as E.B.F. among her circle, with a voice that dripped with derision, "I can't help but wonder what exactly you see in a man like him. A delivery man, of all people. It's almost laughable." She tilted her head, letting her perfectly manicured fingers trace an invisible line along the rim of her champagne glass, her eyes glinting with a mixture of disbelief and calculated cruelty. Victoria's smile wavered for only a moment before she recovered with practiced elegance. "Evelyn, must you always be so harsh? I assure you, there's more to a man than his occupation or his appearance." Her tone was measured, yet there was a tremor of defensiveness hidden beneath her refined exterior. E.B.F. snorted softly. "Oh, darling, please. It's not about his character, though I'm sure you'd like to imagine him as some kind of rugged hero. No, it's about appearances. And honestly, how do you expect your family to view this charade? Our dear Victoria, once the queen of beauty, now parading around with a common delivery man as her husband in contract? It's scandalous." Her voice carried a mocking lilt that sent ripples of suppressed laughter through a nearby cluster of onlookers. Across the room, Victoria's father, a stern man with a meticulously groomed mustache and eyes as cold as polished marble, added his own weight to the criticism. "This is a disgrace to the Monroe legacy," he declared in a low, measured tone that cut through the murmurs. "Our family name is built on tradition and honor. To stoop so low as to associate with someone of such humble origins, especially for a ruse, is unacceptable." A murmur of agreement rippled among the family members, their disapproving glances fixed on Dylan, whose posture had grown noticeably more reserved under the barrage of scrutiny. Even as he attempted to offer a polite smile, his eyes betrayed a tinge of sadness and resignation. "Honestly, Victoria," one of her aunts sneered, "I thought you had better taste than this. A fake marriage contract to appease your father's expectations? And you chose a man who can barely dress himself up for an occasion? I mean, look at him. Does he even know how to tie a proper tie? Dylan, catching snippets of the conversation as he moved to retrieve another misdirected package, clenched his jaw. Yet, despite the onslaught, he maintained his composure, his tone calm when he finally spoke up. I understand that my background might not be what you're accustomed to, but I believe that true worth isn't measured by a suit or a bank statement. I do my job with integrity, and I treat everyone with respect, qualities that, I hope, matter more than titles. His words, sincere as they were, only elicited a round of mocking laughter from the assembled family. EBF leaned in, her voice low and dripping with sarcasm. Oh, how noble of you, Dylan. But let us be honest, noble intentions don't pay the bills, and they certainly don't polish a tarnished reputation. Victoria, dear, you must understand that this isn't a fairy tale. You're sacrificing your dignity for a ruse, and for what? A measly sum of $500,000, no less. That money might buy you temporary solace, but it won't erase the stain on your name. Victoria's eyes flashed with a mixture of hurt and resolve. It's not about the money, she retorted sharply. It's about protecting my family, especially my mother. You wouldn't understand, you haven't had to carry the burden of expectations, of having every step scrutinized by people who think they're better than you. Ah, but that's where you're mistaken, Evelyn interjected, her tone mocking yet incisive. We Monroes are born with that burden, and we wear it like a badge of honor. It's what separates us from the common rabble. And now, you're diluting that heritage by parading around with someone who, quite frankly, belongs to that rabble. A tense silence fell over the group as Victoria's father glared at both his daughter and Dylan. This is not the Monroe way, he intoned, his voice devoid of any warmth. Our family has built its name through centuries of discipline, refinement, and above all, adherence to social propriety. I expect better from you, Victoria. Victoria's heart pounded as she absorbed the barrage of insults. For the first time, the weight of her decision to enter into a sham marriage with Dylan Parker seemed overwhelming. Yet, amid the chorus of disdain, she found herself questioning the very values that her family held dear. Was their scorn truly justified? Or was it merely the echo of a society too blinded by its own vanity to see genuine worth? Dylan, sensing the storm of emotion swirling around Victoria, stepped forward. I don't ask for your approval, he said, his voice low but unwavering. I'm here because Victoria believes in something more, something beyond the confines of social status. And if that is a crime in your eyes, then so be it. A ripple of uncomfortable silence passed through the onlookers, only to be punctured by another sneer. Oh, spare us the dramatics, a distant voice jeered from a group of younger cousins. Tell us, Dylan, does your family line include any hidden talents like how to properly operate a washing machine or mow a lawn? Or are you just destined to be the poster boy for mediocrity? The remark drew raucous laughter from some, while others exchanged glances that spoke of thinly veiled pity. Dylan's face flushed, but he held his ground. I work hard for every bit I earn, he replied, his tone steady despite the sting of the words. And I value honesty and compassion over empty pretenses. I may not have the pedigree you so proudly display, but I have something you might never understand: genuine empathy and the courage to live truthfully. Victoria's eyes shone with tears of anger and sorrow as she observed the exchange. Enough! She suddenly cried out, her voice slicing through the room. This isn't just about you, Dylan. It's about me, my mother, and everything our family stands for. I know you may not share our world, but you've been given an opportunity, one that I believe you deserve. And if you're not willing to rise above the insults, and show what you're truly made of, then perhaps this arrangement was a mistake. The room fell into a heavy silence as all eyes turned to Dylan, waiting for his response. He inhaled deeply, then spoke with a clarity that surprised even himself. "Victoria, I accept your proposal not because I seek to win your approval, but because I believe in the possibility of change. I'll be your husband, at least in name, for as long as you need. And if my background and our differences are a source of amusement to you all, then let it be known that I stand here with pride in who I am, regardless of your judgments." A bitter laugh escaped Evelyn. "How touching. But remember, dear, reality doesn't care for sentiment. Money, legacy, and reputation are the only currencies that matter in this world." She leaned in, her voice soft but scathing. "And your dear Victoria is throwing hers away on a man who is nothing more than a convenient prop in her desperate bid to save face." Victoria's father, his face contorted in anger, shot a look at his daughter. "You were once the pride of this family," he hissed. "Now, you reduce yourself to a farce, relying on a man who can barely dress appropriately for an event like this. Is that the legacy you wish to leave behind?" The tension in the room was palpable as Victoria's eyes met her father's, and then shifted to Dylan's steady gaze. In that moment, a fragile defiance ignited within her, a determination to reclaim her narrative, even if it meant standing alone against the tide of family disdain. "Perhaps," Victoria said quietly at last, "the legacy I leave behind should be one of truth, not of pretense. If my family cannot see that, then maybe it's time for me to redefine what honor truly means." Her words, though soft, carried the weight of her conviction. For a heartbeat, the room was silent, the cacophony of mockery and derision momentarily silenced by the raw power of her declaration. EBF, ever the provocateur, finally broke the silence with a sardonic clap. "Bravo, Victoria! How very noble of you! But let us not kid ourselves, this is nothing more than a desperate ploy to shield your mother from scandal. And if that is the case, then perhaps the real tragedy is not your choice of husband, but the emptiness of the world that expects you to sacrifice yourself for appearances." The words, dripping with cynicism, fell like acid in the charged air. Yet even as the mockery intensified, Victoria felt a spark, a flicker of hope that perhaps, in facing this scorn head-on, she could forge a new path for herself and for those who dared to defy convention. Dylan, still absorbing the barrage of insults, met EBF's gaze squarely. "I'm not here to be your entertainment," he said firmly. "I'm here because Victoria saw something in me that you all seem too blinded by your own vanity to recognize. I may come from a different world, but I choose to live with honesty and humility. And if that means I'm not worthy of your approval, then so be it." A murmur ran through the crowd, part admiration, part reluctant acknowledgement of the truth in his words. For a moment, the veneer of superiority cracked, revealing the uncertainty that lay beneath the carefully constructed facades of the elite. In the days that followed, as the scandal of the fake marriage continued to ripple through New York's social circles, Victoria and Dylan found solace in private conversations that grew more passionate and revealing. Away from the prying eyes and biting tongues, they discussed dreams, fears, and the possibility of forging a life on their own terms, one that was not dictated by the cruel metrics of wealth and status. One quiet afternoon, in the shadow of Central Park's ancient trees, Victoria confided in Dylan while they sat on a secluded bench. "Every day, I feel the weight of their expectations, my family, EBF, and everyone who believes that my value is measured by my past glories. I want to break free from that, Dylan. I want to prove that I can be more than just a pretty face or a title passed down through generations." Dylan's eyes, warm and resolute, met hers. "Victoria, True strength lies in embracing who you are, even if that means defying tradition and facing ridicule. I've chosen this path not because it's easy, but because it's real. I want you to see that we can build something honest together, regardless of what they say. Their whispered dialogue, carried away by the rustling leaves and the distant hum of the city, was a quiet rebellion against the world that sought to confine them. Every word exchanged was a declaration of independence, a promise to rise above the shallow judgments, and to create a legacy that was defined not by mockery, but by authenticity and compassion. In the midst of this personal revolution, the public spectacle of their fake marriage grew ever more contentious. Every social event became a stage for both ridicule and defiance. At an exclusive charity auction held in a stately mansion in Midtown, a particularly cutting remark from a rival socialite nearly reduced Victoria to tears in front of an audience of influential donors. "You know, Victoria," the socialite sneered as she sipped her champagne with exaggerated delicacy, "one must wonder if your heart is still capable of discerning true beauty, or if it has been completely corrupted by your misguided choice in companionship." A delivery man? Really? I expected better from someone who once graced the covers of magazines. Victoria's jaw tightened, and she forced a tight smile. "Beauty is not measured by a man's job title," she retorted coolly. "It is measured by the strength of his character, the kindness in his actions, and the courage in his convictions." Dylan, who had been standing quietly beside her, interjected with calm authority. "I agree completely. True worth is found in what we do for others and the integrity with which we live our lives. I may not come from the world you so readily dismiss, but I know that a person's value isn't defined by a family name or a glittering past. It's defined by who they are when no one is watching." The room fell into a stunned silence, and for a brief moment, even the harshest critics seemed to reconsider their sneering expressions. Yet, the battle was far from over, and the voices of the elite continued to echo their disdain. Late that night, after the auction, as the lights dimmed and the crowd dispersed, Victoria and Dylan found refuge in a quiet study at the Monroe residence. There, away from the prying eyes and cutting remarks, they allowed themselves to speak freely about their hopes, their fears, and the possibility of forging a life that defied all the expectations imposed upon them. "I sometimes wonder," Victoria murmured, her voice trembling with emotion, "if I'll ever be able to escape the judgment of my family, of society. I feel as though every step I take is weighed against a standard that I can never meet." Dylan reached across the desk, his hand warm against hers. "Victoria, you are more than the sum of their expectations. You are a person of incredible strength, and sometimes the bravest act is simply to be yourself, no matter how harshly others might judge you. I believe that our journey, however unconventional, is a testament to the fact that we can redefine what is considered noble and beautiful." Their words, spoken in the quiet intimacy of that study, resonated like a promise that the future, however uncertain, held the potential for a truth that was far more enduring than the shallow judgments of high society. As the months wore on and the final days of their contract drew near, the public mockery gradually gave way to a reluctant admiration. Though the elite still whispered behind gilded screens and exchanged disparaging remarks in hushed tones, there was a growing undercurrent of recognition that something genuine was unfolding between Victoria and Dylan. Their partnership, born of necessity, sustained by defiance, and nurtured by honesty, had become a symbol of hope for those who dared to dream of a world where authenticity reigned supreme. New York City, in its perennial state of flux, carried on as if nothing extraordinary had ever occurred. Yet beneath its glittering facade and relentless pulse of ambition, a secret was about to shatter decades of carefully constructed illusion. The grand halls of the Monroe Corporation headquarters had once again become a stage for high drama, a stage where tradition, desperation, and unexpected alliances converged. And on this day, a truth long buried was finally set free. It began on a rainy Wednesday morning. The relentless drizzle tapped against the towering windows of the Monroe building as Victoria Monroe sat in her private office, staring at the meticulously organized files that chronicled her family's illustrious history. Her heart was heavy with the knowledge that the company's future, and with it, the legacy of the Monroes, hung in the balance. The merger with Parker Logistics had been approved by the board, but the pressure was mounting as financial forecasts grew increasingly dire. Every tick of the clock reminded her that time was running out. Her phone buzzed with an urgent message from her father. Meeting in conference room A in 15 minutes. Prepare for an announcement. Victoria's pulse quickened. The tone was somber, and she knew that whatever her father was about to reveal would have a profound impact on the family's destiny. Minutes later, the boardroom was filled with the usual elite, sharply dressed executives, investors, and a few loyal family advisors. At the head of the table, Victoria's father, Harold Monroe, looked more gaunt than usual, a reflection of the strain that years of relentless pressure had etched into his features. His eyes, once fierce with pride, now carried a deep weariness. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began in a measured, gravelly tone, "we stand at a crossroads. Our company is facing unprecedented challenges, and if we do not secure a transformative contract, bankruptcy is imminent." A murmur rippled through the room, a mixture of apprehension and reluctant acceptance. Victoria's gaze fell to her notes, but she knew that today's meeting would not be about numbers alone. Harold cleared his throat and continued, "I have made the decision to move forward with a partnership that will change everything." His voice was laden with both determination and resignation. "Today, we will sign the final contract with Parker Logistics." A ripple of disbelief swept across the table. Parker Logistics had been shrouded in mystery, its reputation forged by efficiency and modernity, yet its origins were unknown to most of the board. As the tension mounted, the heavy oak door swung open, and all eyes turned in unison. In walked Dylan Parker, his presence commanding despite the simplicity of his attire. Today, however, he was not dressed in the faded uniform of a delivery man. Instead, he wore a tailored navy suit that clung to his robust frame with surprising elegance. His eyes, deep and resolute, swept across the room with an air of quiet confidence. There was something about him, a presence that radiated not only competence, but a hidden legacy. A stunned silence fell as Dylan approached the head of the table. Harold's eyes, which had already harbored skepticism, now widened in shock. "Dylan Parker?" he managed to utter, his voice a mixture of disbelief and disbelief tinged with indignation. Dylan nodded slowly, his expression calm. "Yes, Mr. Monroe. I am Dylan Parker." He paused for a moment before adding, "I realize that you all may have thought you knew me, but there is more to my story than the role I have been playing." A hushed murmur rippled around the room as Dylan took his seat beside Victoria, who watched him with a complex mixture of relief, admiration, and uncertainty. "What do you mean, Dylan?" Mr. Carlyle, one of the board's senior members, interjected sharply. "You were introduced as a humble delivery man, hard-working and sincere. Yes, but what could you possibly have that would justify merging our operations with your firm?" Dylan leaned forward, his eyes meeting each inquisitive stare with unwavering resolve. "I understand the shock, and I appreciate the chance to explain," he said slowly. "For years, I have worked incognito, choosing to lead a modest life not because I lacked opportunity, but because I wanted to see the world as it truly is. I come from the Parker family, one of the wealthiest and most influential in America. My father built our legacy from scratch, and I was born into a life of privilege. But I chose a different path. I wanted to know what life was like for the everyday person, to understand struggle and resilience from the ground up. A stunned silence blanketed the room as the revelation sank in. Murmurs escalated into incredulous whispers. Victoria's eyes filled with tears as she remembered the moments of gentle kindness and unwavering support Dylan had shown her even when he was known to the world as a simple delivery man. "Are you saying," Harold began, his voice trembling, "that you have been living a lie? That the man we all pegged as a delivery man is actually the heir to an American fortune?" Dylan nodded, his tone steady despite the gravity of the moment. "Yes, Mr. Monroe. I deliberately chose to downplay my family's wealth to experience life unfiltered by privilege. I believe that in doing so, I could forge genuine connections and build a business founded on real values that are in line with the innovative approach we now need to save your company." A mixture of shock, anger, and grudging admiration contorted the faces of the board members. Mr. Carlyle, who had been one of the fiercest critics, leaned back and crossed his arms. "This is preposterous. You have been hiding behind a false identity all this time? And now you expect us to believe that you're not only capable of running a logistics company, but that your firm is the solution to our impending crisis?" Dylan's gaze swept the room, pausing on each skeptical face. "I ask you to look beyond the superficial and consider the results," he said, his voice rising with fervor. "Parker Logistics has revolutionized our operations with state-of-the-art technology, streamlined processes, and a commitment to integrity that no other firm can match. I built this company on the foundation of hard work and determination, qualities that have allowed us to overcome challenges that many thought insurmountable. My background, however humble it may have seemed, has given me a perspective that your company desperately needs in these turbulent times." Victoria rose to her feet, her voice ringing clear through the charged silence. "For too long, we have clung to traditions that have become our shackles," she declared, her eyes blazing with defiance and compassion. "Our legacy is not just about wealth and status, it's about adaptability, innovation, and above all, authenticity. Dylan's revelation is not a betrayal of our values, it is an evolution. He has chosen a path of genuine human experience, and that is exactly what we need if we are to survive in this modern world." A heated debate ensued. Harold Monroe's face hardened as he argued, "This is an affront to everything our family stands for. How can we trust a man who has concealed his true identity, whose very essence is built on subterfuge?" Dylan met his father's accusations with calm determination. "Mr. Monroe, I did not hide my identity out of deceit. I hid it to understand what it means to be truly human, to work among those who do not have the luxury of privilege. I have seen both sides of the coin. I know the importance of legacy, and I also know the value of resilience and empathy. My actions have always been guided by a desire to create a better, more honest way of doing business." The boardroom erupted into a cacophony of voices, some condemning, others cautiously optimistic. But as the debate wore on, a slow transformation began to take place. One by one, the board members began to recognize the undeniable success Parker Logistics had achieved. Financial reports, once filled with bleak forecasts, now painted a picture of a company on the rise, thanks in no small part to Dylan's unconventional leadership. In a decisive moment that silenced even the harshest critics, Mr. Carlyle leaned forward and said, "Ms. Monroe, Mr. Parker, I propose we put this matter to a vote. Let us decide once and for all if the merger with Parker Logistics is in the best interest of the Monroe Corporation." After a tense silence, the votes were cast. The result was overwhelming, though not without a few dissenting murmurs. The board approved the merger. A wave of relief swept through the room, punctuated by hesitant applause and a few genuine smiles. Harold Monroe's eyes, though still guarded, softened slightly as he regarded Dylan, a man who had turned what many had seen as a flaw into a formidable strength. After the meeting, in the hushed corridors of the corporate headquarters, Victoria and Dylan found a moment of quiet reprieve. Standing together in a small anteroom lined with ancestral portraits and quiet memories, Victoria looked up at Dylan with a mixture of gratitude and lingering uncertainty. "Dylan," she began softly, "I never imagined this revelation would come to light in such a dramatic fashion. I was terrified of losing everything, our legacy, our reputation, but you've given me hope that we can redefine what it means to be a Monroe." Dylan's gaze was gentle and unwavering as he reached out to take her hand. "Victoria, I know the truth may be hard to accept, especially when it challenges everything you've been taught to believe. But I have always believed that authenticity is the most powerful force we possess. I didn't want to be trapped by the gilded cage of my family's expectations, and I chose a life where I could learn, grow, and truly understand what matters. I want to prove that the values of hard work, honesty, and compassion are worth more than any name or fortune." Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears as she whispered, "I want that too, Dylan. I want to build a future that honors our past without being shackled by it, a future where we can be real, even if it means facing the scorn of those who cannot see beyond appearances." Over the next few weeks, the merger began to work its transformative magic. Parker Logistics integrated seamlessly with the Monroe Corporation, bringing with it a wave of innovation and efficiency. The once dismal financial forecasts slowly turned optimistic, and the public narrative began to shift. Newspapers and financial magazines heralded the merger as a bold, forward-thinking move, one that promised to rescue a storied legacy from the brink of collapse. At a celebratory gala marking the successful merger, the atmosphere was charged with cautious hope. In the opulent ballroom of a historic Manhattan hotel, Victoria and Dylan took the stage together. The room, once filled with whispered ridicule and disdain, now buzzed with anticipation for the future. Victoria addressed the assembled guests with a voice that resonated with newfound authority. "Tonight, we celebrate not merely the survival of a legacy, but its rebirth," she declared. "We stand at the intersection of tradition and innovation, where the values of the past meet the promise of the future. Our decision to partner with Parker Logistics is not an abandonment of who we are, but an evolution, a recognition that true strength comes from embracing change." Dylan followed, his tone warm and resolute. "I come from a background that many assumed was nothing more than humble origins, but I have learned that true worth is measured by the integrity of one's actions and the resilience of one's spirit. Today, I pledge to continue serving not just as a partner in this venture, but as a living testament to the belief that anyone, regardless of their pedigree, can rise to greatness when they choose to live authentically." The applause that erupted was thunderous, a mixture of genuine admiration, relieved optimism, and perhaps a touch of disbelief that a story so unlikely could have a happy ending. Even Harold Monroe, who had been a pillar of stoic resistance, allowed himself a brief nod of approval as he observed his daughter and Dylan standing united. Later that evening, as the gala wound down and the guests began to depart into the cool Manhattan night, Victoria and Dylan retreated to a quiet balcony overlooking the city's shimmering skyline. The night air was crisp, carrying the soft hum of distant traffic and the muted sounds of a city that never truly slept. Victoria leaned against the balcony railing, her eyes reflecting the myriad lights below. "Dylan," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I never thought I'd see the day when our world would come together like this, a former beauty queen, a legacy on the brink of collapse, and a man from a hidden lineage who chose to live among us. It feels like a miracle." Dylan smiled gently, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "It does feel miraculous, doesn't it? Sometimes, the most extraordinary transformations begin in the most unexpected ways. I chose to leave behind a life of comfort because I wanted to understand what it meant to be truly alive. And in doing so, I discovered that the path to greatness isn't paved by wealth alone, it's paved by the courage to embrace life as uncertainties, and to stand by the ones you love." Victoria's gaze softened. "I'm still scared, Dylan. I'm scared of what my family might say when they learn the full truth about you, and about what we've built together. But I also know that I can't let fear dictate my life any longer." He pulled her close, his voice firm yet tender. "We'll face it together, Victoria. The truth, however harsh, has a way of setting us free. Our journey, this merger, this partnership is only the beginning. Let those who doubt us say what they will, the legacy we create will speak for itself." In that moment, with the city's lights flickering like distant beacons of hope, Victoria and Dylan made an unspoken promise to one another. They vowed to build a future where authenticity triumphed over pretense, where legacy was redefined not by superficial wealth, but by genuine human connection and integrity. Over the following months, the new alliance between Monroe Corporation and Parker Logistics transformed into a beacon of innovation and resilience. Victoria spearheaded initiatives to modernize the company, integrating cutting-edge technology with sustainable practices, while Dylan's visionary leadership infused the business with a culture of empathy and accountability. Together, they not only saved a storied legacy, but also reshaped the way the business world viewed tradition and progress. Public opinion shifted as well. Where once there had been scorn and derision from the elite, there emerged a cautious admiration for the bold move. Media outlets, once critical of Victoria's unorthodox choices, now celebrated the merger as a paradigm shift and narrative of redemption, hope, and the power of unlikely alliances. One crisp evening at a follow-up press conference held at the newly renovated Monroe headquarters, Victoria and Dylan stood side by side before a sea of reporters and flashing cameras. Victoria spoke with conviction. "Our journey has taught us that true legacy is not static. It is ever evolving, shaped by our willingness to adapt and by the courage to embrace change. Today, we stand as living proof that authenticity and innovation can revive even the most time-honored institutions." Dylan added, "I am proud to say that my company, built on humble beginnings, has proven that integrity and hard work can bridge the gap between worlds. Together, we are forging a future that honors our past while boldly stepping into a new era of possibility." The room erupted in applause, a resounding affirmation of the success of their partnership and a hopeful message to others who dared to challenge convention. In that moment, as cameras flashed and voices of praise filled the air, Victoria and Dylan knew that the trials they had endured, the mockery, the secrets, and the desperate measures had been the very crucible in which a new legacy was forged. Later that night, as they celebrated with close friends and loyal employees at an intimate rooftop gathering overlooking Central Park, Victoria found herself reflecting on the twists of fate that had led her to this point. The cool breeze and the distant glow of the city served as a reminder that every ending was simply the precursor to a new beginning. "Dylan," she said quietly, toasting him with a glass of champagne, "I never imagined that a misdelivered package and harsh words from high society would lead to this. You've shown me that the truth of who we are is far more important than any title or fortune." Dylan's eyes sparkled with warmth and understanding. "Victoria, I chose this path not because I wanted to defy expectations for the sake of defiance, but because I believed in a world where every person is valued for their true self. I'm grateful that our paths crossed, and that together we can build something lasting, a legacy not of mere wealth, but of hope and transformation." As the celebration continued into the early hours of the morning, Victoria and Dylan's journey, once marked by deception and necessity, had blossomed into a tale of resilience, redemption, and genuine partnership. The revelation of Dylan's true heritage, once a source of scandal and derision, had become a turning point that united two worlds and redefined what it meant to be part of a legacy. In the days that followed, the once skeptical board members, even Victoria's most entrenched critics, began to recognize the extraordinary change that had taken place. The Monroe Corporation's financial outlook improved steadily, and investors praised the innovative synergy between tradition and modernity. Behind the scenes, the merger sparked a cultural shift that extended beyond business. It inspired a broader conversation about authenticity, humility, and the power of unexpected alliances. On a final, serene afternoon before the anniversary of the merger, Victoria and Dylan met once more on the balcony of the Monroe headquarters. The city spread out beneath them, a testament to the relentless spirit of New York, while the setting sun bathed the skyline in hues of gold and lavender. Victoria rested her hand on Dylan's, her voice soft yet resolute. "We've come so far, Dylan. Today, I see that our legacy is not defined by the glimmer of wealth or the weight of tradition, but by the courage to embrace who we are, flaws, dreams, and all. I'm no longer afraid of what others might say, because I know that our truth is worth more than any criticism." Dylan's smile was tender and full of promise. "Victoria, every day with you has taught me that true greatness comes not from where we come from, but from how we choose to live our lives. I'm honored to be by your side, and I look forward to every new challenge and every new opportunity to prove that together we can build a future that shines brighter than the past." In that moment, as the city whispered promises of tomorrow and the gentle murmur of hope filled the air, Victoria and Dylan embraced a future that defied convention, a future where legacy was not inherited by birth, but earned through the courage to live authentically and love unconditionally. Their journey, which began with a misdelivered package and the sting of elite mockery, had evolved into a story of transformation that resonated far beyond the boardrooms and opulent halls of high society. It was a story that celebrated the triumph of the human spirit over prejudice, the power of unexpected alliances, and the timeless truth that every person, regardless of their origins, holds the potential to change the world. And as New York City continued its ceaseless dance of lights and dreams, Victoria and Dylan looked out over the horizon, knowing that the legacy they were building together was not just a rescue of the past, but the birth of a new era, a future where authenticity and hope reigned supreme, and where even the most unlikely unions could change the course of history. The end.